What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this NBA 118 slate on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. Yesterday, we actually had a lot of success. Had some late night pivot action. If you guys showed up for the live stream, I gave away one of my favorite pivots if the Raptors did rule out Gary Trent, and they indeed did. And they started Precious Achiuwa. He went off for, at the $3,900 price tag. He played, I think, the entire game, 39 minutes, and went off for 30.25 points. So again, if you guys showed up for the live stream, that was one of my favorite pivots after lock. One thing we did do in Discord chat is once Gary Trent was ruled out, I told everybody to pivot to Precious Achiuwa. It was him. It was Joe Ingles, Dwight Howard, and Joe Val as like the only value plays really to look at on the slate. He took priority over every single one, including Joe Val. Just with the min upside there. So again, one of the many benefits you guys get to buying our $20 package, it gives you access to our premium Discord chat where I'm able to update you guys, and also utilizing the late swap priority list where I update my favorite overall plays on the slate based on late breaking injury news. So a lot of success. This guy actually turned, I believe, $21 into, that was a different screenshot. Regardless, he had some takedowns here. It turned $27 into $135, $24, $80, $12.35, and $4 into $25 there in a very small GBP. This guy was the guy I was referring to, $21 into $99. I cashed myself. I played a bigger GBP. I probably shouldn't have. Turned like $12 into 50 in one contest and 27 into like 120. Regardless, success all the way around. Let's go ahead and focus on this NBA slate. This is a pretty stressful one. And keep in mind, I will be going live before lock about 30 minutes later than I normally do because this slate does start at 7:30. So I'll be going live around 6 o'clock. It is a two-game slate, so it's going to be a pretty quick live stream, but we'll be looked to gaining an edge there right before lock. Hopefully some slate-breaking injury news does come out so that we have a little bit more of an edge. But as of right now, I think we have a pretty good grasp here on the slate. So we have two games. Like I said, the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the New York Knicks here, the very first game. 214 over-under. Minnesota is favored by 3 points. They are playing away. This is the very first game to tip off. Let's actually focus on the Minnesota side first. So when we sort by value, there's one player that I do want to highlight here, and that is going to be Pat Bev. This is a slate where we really are lacking value plays, and I think Pat Bev at 5.5K is a pretty decent mid-range play because he is playing starter minutes. 5.5K. He's been hitting his price point, averaging exactly 1 fantasy point per minute here on the season. So as you guys can see, playing pretty consistent starter minutes, bouncing anywhere between 25 to 30-ish minutes here once he does get the start. And he is considered a starter here. At least he's expected to start. We have Pat Bev, D'Lo, Anthony Edwards, Vanderbilt, and Karl Anthony Towns expected to be the starter lineup. After Pat Bev, these plays really are, hit or miss. Karl Anthony Towns is projected to play 36 minutes. He's a 10.2K price tag, but overall on the slate, he's one of the more elite pay-up options. There's Steph Curry, then him, and then there's a huge price drop, a $1,000 difference there to Julius Randle. I do think, in terms of roster construction, you're going to have to land on one of Karl Anthony Towns or Steph Curry. I do think Towns has a higher floor. I think Steph Curry obviously has a higher ceiling. So take your pick between those two. I personally think that Karl Anthony Towns is more cash viable. We haven't projected only 37.8 points. 47.52 points and a 4.7 point per dollar value. So that is one thing to consider there. I do think you have to land on one of either Karl Anthony Towns or Steph Curry, and I'm not in love with either one of them, especially the matchup there with Detroit. Obviously a 14-point deficit or a favorite there for Golden State. So that could be a blowout potential game. But going down the rest of this list here, I don't hate D'Lo and I don't hate Anthony Edwards. We always throw those two into the same conversation because they're pretty much the same player in terms of fantasy points per minute. Averaging close to about 1.14. And these guys are projected pretty much the same minutes. Anthony Edwards does play a little bit longer, but he's also a little bit more expensive. So take your pick between the two, especially in bigger GBPs. I don't think either one of these guys are definitely a must. Their price tags make it very hard to land on them, and I don't love the matchup here. 214 is actually relatively low, so I don't expect them to have a ceiling game, but I do expect them, one of those two guys to have close to a value game. They're not going to make or break the slate, in my opinion, because I do think there's some better mid-range to pay up options here on the slate. The rest of these guys are just going to be GPP options, but I do think Pat Bev is going to carry a decent amount of ownership. Same thing with Karl Anthony Towns, just because of lineup construction itself here at 10.2K. I think you have to pay it for one of these studs. Switching over to the New York Knicks, I'm starting to really like the New York Knicks in terms of the rotations because Nerlens Noel was ruled out. Kemba Walker is not expected to play. Cam Reddish and D Rose are still out here for these guys. So RJ Barrett has been playing a tremendous, like a crazy amount of minutes as of late. He's played 41, 41, 39 the past 3 games. Now, he did play yesterday, so all the Knicks are playing on the back-to-back here, so it would be pretty surprising to see him play over 40 minutes again on the back-to-back, but Tom Thibodeau is not afraid to play these guys minutes. Right now, he's projected 38 minutes. I think that's pretty accurate, and I do think RJ Barrett's going to carry a decent amount of ownership with the amount of minutes that he's been playing. He's not the best fantasy point per minute player, but he's also not the worst. If we take a look here at the board, RJ Barrett's averaging 1.03 fantasy points per minute and 427 minutes of sample size with D Rose, Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, and Cam Reddish off the court. So definitely don't mind him. A pretty average player with a high minute upside. You're definitely going to need that on a very small slate like this slate. So I do prefer him. He's one of my favorite options here on the Knicks. Evan Fournier, definitely hit or miss, definitely shot dependent. Right now we have him projected at 30 minutes. He is going to be in the starter rotation, kind of neutral on him. Don't hate or love him. And then going down the line here, Alec Burks is definitely hit or miss. He's going to have that minute upside. I used to love him, but he just hasn't been performing that well as of late in terms of fantasy points per minute. I definitely like the minute upside, and I don't hate him as the last piece in cash, but I definitely do prefer somebody like RJ Barrett here in the spot. Mitchell Robinson is another guy I want to talk about here. A 5.4K price tag, does have the minute upside, especially when he does start. Now, Taj Gibson is probably going to play and eat into his minutes. He is projected right now 17 minutes. So Mitchell Robinson, definitely more of a GPP play in my opinion. He only played 25 minutes last game, which was yesterday. So I expect around that minute upside again, about 25 to 28 minutes there for Mitchell Robinson. Definitely more of a GPP play. He is projected right now 29 minutes. So one cash locked on one player I do really like on this roster is going to be RJ Barrett. And then last but not least, we have the Detroit Pistons versus the Golden State Warriors. And there's actually some really good value plays on the Detroit Pistons, which is very weird to say because they are 14-point underdogs. So these guys could not play the entire fourth quarter. You would think. So one thing I want to dive deeper into is the rotations here when they do get blown out. Last game against the Chicago Bulls, this wasn't the last game, this was 2 games ago, where they got decimated. I think they ended up losing by close to 40 points. I don't have the exact score here, but it was bad. I want to take a look into the last rotations that they had, the people playing pretty much the entire game regardless of the blowout. And there's a couple players I want to highlight because the expected starting lineup for tonight is going to be Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Diallo, Saddiq Bey, and also Isaiah Stewart. The exact same lineup that they had starting against the Chicago Bulls. There's 2 players that played deep into the fourth quarter, and they were also starters. That is Killian Hayes and also Saddiq Bey. So I do think for what it's worth, those guys are blowout proof, and I don't think that they're going to repeat history. Like I don't necessarily think that Killian Hayes is going to play the entire game again, but I do think they're blowout proof. Like if they're going to roll out some random rotation, I think that Killian Hayes has a very good chance to play into the fourth quarter here. At $3,800, he's projected to play and start 27 minutes. Killian Hayes is probably my favorite value play here on the entire slate. And he's also been killing it in the amount of minutes that he's been getting. Here's that game versus Chicago Bulls where he played 33 minutes. So Killian Hayes, one of my favorite value plays, if not my favorite overall value play here on this slate. Cade Cunningham, $7,500, I think makes a lot of sense here, assuming that the game stays close. So if this game does stay close, I think there's tremendous upside here for Cade Cunningham. With these guys off the court, he's averaging 1.07 fantasy points per minute, which is actually the highest on the team. So I do think that Cade Cunningham makes just as much sense as RJ Barrett, and especially if the game does stay close. I actually do prefer him. If I knew that the game was going to stay close, I think that the raw upside there is for Cade Cunningham. Saddiq Bey, you can pretty much throw into the exact same conversation. He did play the entire fourth quarter when they were blowing out, or when they were getting blown out by Chicago at $6,800. Definitely don't mind him. I think the minute upside will be there regardless. So I actually do prefer Saddiq Bey just as much as Cade Cunningham. I think Killian Hayes, Cunningham, and Saddiq Bey are going to carry a decent amount of ownership here on the slate. Some other options that we can talk about here. Isaiah Stewart does have a good matchup there versus Kevon Looney, but his minute upside hasn't been there at $4,600. I'm not in love with him. Josh Jackson is another guy at $3,600. If this game does blow out, he's going to see a lot more runs, so that's another thing to consider. I would consider him viable, especially if Killian Hayes is the only other value play here on the slate. But that does lead me to my first prize pick entry, and I actually skipped over my other favorite prize pick entry, so I'll go ahead and talk about both of them. My favorite prize pick entries here on the slate are going to be Pat Bev, 8.5 raw points. I'm going to hit the over. In a close competitive matchup as expected here versus the Knicks, he has hit that the past 4 out of 5 times. And he doesn't need too many minutes to get there. So I do have him projected at 29 minutes. I think that is more than enough time for him to hit the over of 8.5 raw points. Same thing with Killian Hayes. I think he's pretty much my favorite overall play here on the slate in terms of prize picks. 6.5 points. Like I said, I think he's blowout proof here in this game. 6.5, he's hit that the past 3 out of 5 games, and I have a lot of confidence here in Killian Hayes at the over. So if you guys haven't signed up for prize picks, go ahead and enter code using DGF. For 100% matchup to $100, you simply hit the over or under on any certain fantasy props or projections fantasy points, and we don't have the fantasy points populated yet for NBA. But if you are a confident player and you want to step up your fantasy game, go ahead and download the PrizePicks app on the store and enter code using DGF on sign up for a 100% matchup to $100. You can get that free $100 deposited into your account. If you hate PrizePicks, you don't have to play again, but it's a free $100 deposit. So Killian Hayes, Pat Bev, my favorite overs here for this slate. Last but not least, we do have the Golden State Warriors. These guys have some decent under-the-radar plays. Kuminga, we just can't ignore at this point. They've been giving him minutes off the bench. Steve Kerr's been all over the place in terms of his minutes. Now, keep in mind, the last 2 games have been blowouts. And this is a blowout potential game yet again versus Detroit Pistons. So I do consider him more GPP viable. But if he is going to come off the bench and play 25 to 30 minutes, then yeah, sign me up for Kuminga at $4,300, but definitely more of a GPP play. I don't have any real confidence outside of Kuminga. Klay Thompson at $5,500 is actually the next best value, and he actually did get a price reduction down to $5,500 so far this season. Since he has played, he's averaging 1.1 fantasy points per minute, which is very respectable, but he's only projected 24 minutes here. If we take a look at his game log, he has not played over 23 minutes. Now, keep in mind the last game was a blowout, so we could have seen about 27 to 28 minutes if he actually did play the entire game. So that is something to consider, which I think is more than enough time for him to hit that over in terms of his value. So at $5,500, if he's going to play 28 minutes, definitely consider him a decent GPP option. Steph Curry, like I said, you're going to have to choose between him or Cat come the time of lock. Definitely don't have as much confidence in Steph as I do Cat because the game script just doesn't make sense. They are 14-point favorites. Like Steph Curry could easily just play 25 minutes and only drop about 40 DraftKings points, and then that would definitely kill your lineup. Otto Porter Jr., he is expected to start and play. We only have him projected about 25 to 28 minutes at the $5,800 price tag. I'm definitely kind of neutral on him. And then also Kevon Looney. Pretty much this entire lineup is going to be GPP viable. I definitely do prefer the Detroit side. And if they do keep it close, less than 14 points, then I love the Detroit side there. All the price tags do make sense with the minute upside. And that's pretty much going to wrap up the slate, guys. I did crunch a lineup based on my projections, and they definitely favor the Detroit Pistons. You can land on guys like Pat Bev, Karl Anthony Towns, and I actually do have Kuminga in my lineup and RJ Barrett. That will probably change up through lock, but this is a pretty solid lineup with some of my favorite plays. As of right now, if you're locking in a couple players, I am locking in Killian Hayes, Saddiq Bey, also Cade Cunningham, and Pat Bev. Those are going to be my favorite plays on the slate. You can even throw RJ Barrett into that conversation. But that will wrap up my video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this content. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future NBA content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.